Hey, everybody, welcome into Proline TV. I'm Tony Mejia from PlaybookExperts.com, joined by Andy Iskoe, owner of TheLogicalApproach.com. We are gearing up, obviously, for a big basketball few months with the college basketball ramping up to March Madness and the NBA and all other sports. But this particular video is on MLB, which is over a little bit over a month away, but pitchers and catchers have reported spring training getting ready to go in full swing in Florida and Arizona. And if you've missed the the baseball over the last few months, you're about to get your fix as the marathon is soon to begin. Andy, what are you looking forward to most over the next few months as far as America's old school pastime?
No, I thought you were going to say over the next few months. I was thinking about, I think 1 month from today, I believe it might be the day where we have the play-in games for the NCAA tournament. As far as baseball goes, I'm looking forward to another fun season. We'll find out which are the surprise teams, who, if anybody, can beat the Dodgers. In fact, we have some props here we'll talk about a little bit, but I'll be using numbers from Circa. They actually have a prop, and you can bet yes or no that the Dodgers have the most regular season wins. You can also bet whether the White Sox have the most regular season losses. So we don't expect there to be too many surprises from those two teams. Certainly not the Dodgers, but there'll always be some surprises that we hopefully will be right on and take advantage of them in April, because by the middle of June to July, the April underdogs become the midsummer favorites.
Right. And we'll definitely get to the Dodgers here in a second. This is the National League video. We're going to review some hot stove stuff, off-season additions and subtractions, break down all the divisional races. Andy's got you covered on projected win totals. He's using Circa numbers. I'll chime in on some DraftKings stuff. But basically, just to get you ready for what you're about to see, this is not our preview. So while we will make some predictions and some determinations on what you should get into early enough before numbers change, we will have AL and NL previews down the road. But this is more of a get you caught up on what's transpired over the last few months. And we'll get to those juggernaut Dodgers who look stronger than ever, the defending champions. But let's start with the NL East, where the New York Mets made the biggest splash in the offseason, signing Juan Soto to a record-breaking deal, offered him a little more than the Yankees in terms of 1 year less and a few dollars more. And to me, I think it was the Latin clubhouse that was the determining factor in extracting Soto from the Bronx Bombers over to Queens, where he'll now make the biggest splash with the Mets. Mets obviously made the NLCS last year, but it was the Philadelphia Phillies who won the NL East in the regular season. They were defeated by the Mets in the NLDS. We've also got the Atlanta Braves set to return. And then, the Washington Nationals are back, as are the lowly Miami Marlins, who look like your glorified minor league team at this point based on their roster.
You're sort of saying that they may be contenders with the Chicago White Sox for fewest major league wins.
Unless those kids are really good. But yeah, Skip Schumacher is gone. They have now turned things over to Clayton McCullough.
Yeah, they do have. I'll just very quickly. They have a nice roster. The problem is it's very young, and the last few years they've been hit by a lot of key injuries.
Yeah, and we'll go ahead and break these teams down. So let's start with the AL East. And let's start with the Philadelphia Phillies, defending champions, 95-67 last season. Andy, what you got for them on a projected win total from Circa? DraftKings at this point has them at 91 and a half regular season wins. Just to break down what the Phillies have done, Kyle Schwarber is back. Really didn't do much in terms of offseason movement with the Phillies. They did add Max Kepler and Jesus Luzardo from the Marlins. So their rotation probably gets a little stronger. Kepler certainly a lefty bat that will be interesting to monitor in that lineup. But for the most part, the Phillies return intact.
Looking they did not lose all that much from last year.
No.
Certainly no key players.
I do, however, tend to, with the Braves being stronger, in my opinion, and the Mets adding Soto and some other pieces, I think I would right now bet the under on 91.5 wins. What do you got on their number from Circa?
Well, one of the things that Circa does, and they've done it in football the last several years, and I don't recall if they did it with baseball last year, is they give you 3 alternate numbers. The standard one, in fact, I'll go to the Phillies. The Phillies are 91.5, as you mentioned, and that's basically minus 110 each way for the over or the under. Places that use 30-cent lines might have minus 115 each way. And by the way, it's very important to shop around, and whatever number well, I should say not whatever number necessarily, because there are adjustments, but you do want to use a 20-cent line as opposed to a 30-cent or higher. But for example, as I look at the Phillies, they're alternate numbers, and they adjust them by 6 wins. So basically a week's worth of the season. If you're really optimistic about the Phillies, you can play them over 97.5 wins and get plus 225. If you want to play under that number, which is a higher number, instead of laying the minus 110 for the 91.5, you would lay minus 265. So minus 265 plus 225 on the alternate high number. On the other hand, if you're pessimistic about the Phillies and you want to play them under, that would be 85.5. And you would play, Phillies under 85.5 would be plus 215. The over 85.5, which is the lower number, is minus 250. So I'll use that as an example, and maybe what I'll do instead of throwing out the VIGs on them, because that's a typical range, I'll just indicate, for those of you who may not want to do all the math and then take the plus and minus 6 on the normal win totals, but those basically what it is. It does give you an option if you have a strong opinion. It's a little bit different in baseball because you play so many games, but for example, there were a lot of good opportunities this past year in the NFL. I'll say, for example, the 3 surprise teams in the playoffs, Denver, Minnesota, and Washington, their season win totals were like 6.5. So they clearly blew by that. And it's a little easier in the NFL if you've got strong opinions than it is in baseball. And that's simply because you play 162 games during baseball. And so a 6-game variation, which is roughly about a 40%, about a 4% variation. Let's see, 160, 10% would be a 16-game difference. So 8 would be about 5%, so 6 would be about a 4% difference that you would have in Major League Baseball, which is a very small margin.
And yeah, really, I mean, if you like the Phillies last year, not a lot of variables. Rob Thompson's got to figure out the bullpen, but I mean, the rotation return certainly intact. Aaron Nola, I mean, he had a bounce back year last season. You've obviously got Zach Wheeler, Christopher Sanchez, Ranger Suarez. They added Luzardo, like I mentioned. Lineup is pretty much the same. Schwarber's going to lead off, hit his home runs and strike out. Alec Bohm, Trey Turner, all these guys are back, and obviously Bryce Harper in that middle of that rotation. And Kepler will be interesting to monitor. He'll be an X factor, as will Luzardo. The Braves, I think, though, is a team that.
By the way, let me just mention Philadelphia. You take a look at that lineup. That's as good a 1 through 9 as you probably have in the National League. Yeah. I guess the Dodgers could be there too, but I mean, it's hard. It's hard right now when you're just looking at, and of course, you never know about injuries, but you'd have to think that it's and a lot of it will come down. For example, and remember, in baseball, you play that schedule where you play. It's not quite as unbalanced as it used to be. You still play a lot of games within your division, so a lot of it comes down. We expect the Mets to be good. We expect the Braves to be good. So very often it may come down to all those games that they play against the Nationals and the Marlins that could determine Philadelphia's fate as far as who wins that division. You
like the value there then, Andy?
Let's see. What were they last year? They were
96 wins last year.
96?
95.
Yeah, let me see here.
Yeah, so 91.5 this time around. And again, continuity. I mean, it does speak volume. The Mets and the Mets and Braves are a little shinier. Braves obviously welcoming some key players back with Acuna and Strider. And we'll get to them in a second. But yeah, what do you think
right now I would tend to go over the 91.5 because I still think on balance, especially the top 3 in the rotation, Wheeler and Sanchez are proven nicely, especially Wheeler over the years coming over from the Mets a number of years ago. And Nola still is capable of another good season or two. Ranger Suarez, if he stays healthy, could be a big addition. And Luzardo, when he was healthy, back in his days with Oakland and then with the Marlins, put up some pretty decent numbers. So I would think that that's going to be a strength of the Phillies. And again, but you mentioned the key thing, and it's the bullpen. The thing is that the Phillies have the kind of roster and the depth in the order to overcome weak performances by the bullpen.
Right. And I mean, the Braves, I think there's value there, although DraftKings has them at 93.5 as far as victory goes. They're hoping to have a healthy Ronald Acuna Jr., a healthy Spencer Strider, and a healthy Sean Murphy, which they didn't have last year. Ian Anderson is back, and their big offseason splash was adding Jerickson Profar. Lose host Jorge Soler, but again, they added him midseason from the San Francisco Giants, so not really a huge loss there. And potentially, you've got a Sale, Strider, Schwellenbach, Reynaldo Lopez was an all-star last year, and either Ian Anderson or Bryce Elder as your fifth guy. Bullpen should be there. It was very strong last year. Chris Sale stays healthy. Again, 89 wins last year, but we know why. Down year for Ozzie Albies. He got hurt for a few months too.
And Acuna.
And Acuna, obviously. So, and he should be back in the fold. And he was having a monster year. Clearly one of the best players in baseball is his ability to really ignite lineups with both his power and his speed. So what do you think of Braves?
You have them, what, 93.5?
93.5, correct.
Okay. Yeah. Circa has them. And again, this is about a week old. 92.5 is the standard number. So the optimistic number is 98.5. The pessimistic number is 86.5. And again, the VIG is attached. It's significant. Probably about $1.25 each way if you want to go that way, roughly, as far as from a minus 110 to like minus. This one's like minus 245 on the over the 86.5, for example. And when I take a look at the Braves. Yeah, they figure with those two guys back, the offense is going to be better than it was last year. We don't know about Chris Sale's health, but keep in mind, if he's healthy, he offsets the loss of Max Fried, who he's Fried. He had some injuries. His numbers have been decent, although one thing that has concerned me over the last few years is his whip has gone from really, really good, under 1.1 to between 1.1 and 1.2, which is still, I think, better than average, but in the group of a lot of good pitchers, like a number two. Probably a number two pitcher on most staffs. Maybe in some staffs it'd be a number one who would have something like that. But you mentioned the key thing also. Again, the bullpen may compensate for. Again, let's take a look at the last two starters, and I compare the last two starters that we just mentioned for the Phillies with the last two starters, maybe even the three starters that you've mentioned for the Braves. I give the edge to the Phillies there as far as the rotation goes. But again, the bullpen has been such a major part of baseball over the last 25 years or so that shortage in the bullpen may be compensated for by the strength the shortage in the rotation may be compensated for by the strength of the Atlanta bullpen. Of course, we don't know what will happen with the Philadelphia bullpen, but we do know that there are a lot of good arms there in the bullpen. I think right now the average bullpen probably pitches about 40 to 45% of most games if you're talking about 9-inning games. So most starters may go 5 1/3 innings, and the balance, of course, goes to the bullpen.
Veteran rubber arm Jesse Chavez is gone.
Yeah.
Aaron Bummer has been added. Raisel Iglesias, one of the better closers in the game.
Gio Urshela is gone from the infield.
Yep. And yeah, I mean, look, Profar, I think, is a huge X factor. He had a great year with the San Diego Padres last season. Yeah. And Michael Harris is healthy again.
Profar came up with Texas, I think, as a huge prospect.
As a phenom,
and he struggled a little early, but his last several years, he's not quite reached the level that maybe they thought of him when he was like 20 years old, but he certainly exceeded when he was being considered a bit of a disappointment, significantly.
Yeah, and again, the 89 wins last year, disappointment by Atlanta standards. They're expected to bounce back at 93.5. I tend to like the over there again. But you're banking on Strider coming back from his surgery and Acuna staying healthy for 162. Same with Albies, same with Harris, and Profar adjusting to his new surroundings early, because there isn't much room for error when you're banking on the over on teams with over 90 wins. Any significant opinion on that, or wait and see?
It's more of a wait and see. I want to see how a guy like Sale looks in spring training. Not that you can always tell, but at least you can get some idea with his pitch selection, etc. Not necessarily concerned and certainly early in spring training about the velocity, where you're still working yourself, getting into shape. Want to see how the bullpen competition works out as far as that goes. But you've got 3 teams in the National League East, all at 91.5 or better. I mentioned the Phillies at 91.5, the Mets at 91.5, who we'll get to next. And then you've got the Braves either at the 93.5 that I'm showing, the 92.5 that I'm showing, or 93.5 that you're showing. So, that's a lot of wins. You're basically talking about teams going, let's use 90 even example, 90 and 72. So you're looking at 3 teams going better than 90 and 72. So they're really expecting a decline in both, or a down season for both Washington and Miami. So you'd have to think, if there's a division that could produce 3 90-win teams, it would tend to be the National League East. No chance, I would think, in the National League Central. And the Dodgers are so dominating in the National League West. Although I guess you could take a look and say that, Padres, Giants, and even Diamondbacks have some decent rosters, but they're going to play all those games against the Dodgers, and what are those teams going to do? You would figure. I don't know what the number is, but let's say they play 14 games against them. What would you think? They might be like 5-9 or something like that in their games against the Dodgers.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to the Dodgers because that's I think the prevailing team in the NL, just not only because they're reigning champions, but they had a monster offseason.
Yeah, what they've added.
This is our hot stove report. Again, Andy Iskoe from thelogicalapproach.com. I'm Tony Mejia. You're watching the National League semi-preview. We'll have a full season preview, but this is more of a recap. And we mentioned the New York Mets. Let's ride with them. DraftKings currently has them at 90.5. You mentioned that Circa has
91.5.
And they went.
By the way, when were those numbers as of? Was that adjusted for the signing of Alonso?
Yes, these are current numbers for DraftKings.
Okay.
Yep. As of this very second, those are the numbers you can get. And the Mets 89 and 73 last season. But if anybody remembers the start of the 2024 campaign, they went through a lineup long slump where everybody was terrible. Mark Vientos really was a spark for them. Grimace was a spark for them, and they got going really mid-season and never looked back. They had some arms go down, and really guys.
And they're already having injuries. They're already having some issues. With Montes.
Yeah, Montes is out. And again, we've got no Jose Quintana. He was a Band-Aid for them last year. Another Band-Aid that could step into the Montes void is Buto, who stepped in middle relief. Yeah. But right now, I've got Kodai Senga, Sean Manaea, Peterson, Tyler McGill, and then 2 additions that will probably determine whether the Mets have a really strong regular season. If considering, I think Soto's. We'll talk about him in a second.
Yeah.
But 2 pitchers to watch. They added Clay Holmes from the Yankees, going to make him a starter, and Griffin Canning from the Angels. Yeah. And again, the importance of those 2 guys go way up with Frankie Montes looking like he's going to miss a lot.
And even if Montes were there, my first reaction is there's no real ace on this staff, and it's hard to even argue that there's a solid number 2 who would qualify. Now, we don't know about Senga and how healthy he's going to be.
If he's healthy, I think Senga's the ace.
Yeah, but if you were to rank the 30 teams and looked at their number 1 starter, I'd still say that even with Senga, the Mets are probably in the bottom, 3rd?
It really does depend on him, because when he's on, he's on. But again, has had some health issues. And I think Clay Holmes is an X factor. It depends on how he attacks. And again, this is not our let's cement things and set them in stone preview. This is what this team is shaping up for with pitchers and catchers.
Holmes
now
actually pitched well in his limited starts last year, I think, with the Yankees.
Who was that?
Holmes.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a Yankees fan, so I know Clay Holmes pretty well. And again, I think it's definitely a steal from New York. I'm not a Griffin Canning fan. Certainly, he
had a good start last year, but
and he's got great stuff. He's got ridiculous stuff, but it always seems to have some issues with cementing things. Also, the Mets added Jose Siri
Yeah.
who has had success. He was with the Rays last season. So I mean, it's a Mets and the big move besides Soto was re-signing Pete Alonso.
Yeah.
It looked for a little bit like
I believe
Alonso
it's
was
a
going to get
2-year
away from them
contract with
with
a
an
player
option
opt out after this
next
coming
season.
season. Yeah,
Correct.
2025. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the coming season, absolutely. But yeah, you got Jose Azocar also on board, but Marte, Nimmo, Soto, and Siri. That's a pretty good, four outfielders. Luis Angel Acuna, Ronald's little brother. He's
Right.
a sleeper prospect. They've got him. Obviously, you've got Vientos coming off a breakout season. I think based on where he was supposed to be as a prospect, how poorly he started, and then how excellent he was last season, inconsistent at times, the Mets' best hitter. Hopefully he breaks through early, and then you've got a loaded squad, and they're hoping that Francisco Alvarez makes that kind of jump, because Alvarez, similar type of prospect to Vientos. So I mean, look, you can't really say that the Mets won't be better. Edwin Diaz now back healthy again, confident in what he was able to do at the end of last season. A team that really has gelled under Carlos Mendoza, and I think they like each other a lot. So again, we'll see how this team gels, and the first few weeks of the season is going to be early. But at 90 and a half, 91 and a half, a team that really slumped and still won 89 games, and obviously maybe an LCS,
And struggled early.
is the only way to go, to me.
Yeah, struggled early with the offense. And yeah, Diaz seemed to be the Diaz that they expected when he came over to Seattle, even though he had that one really, really, really bad year in postseason. But it's a team that won 89 games last year, and certainly offensively, I mean, that's as good a trio as you can have: Alonso, Soto, and Lindor. I mean, that's there's no easy out in the first part of that lineup. But I think the key to the Mets is going to be the starting rotation. Now we know that the ownership, Cohen, likes to spend money, so I would not be surprised if the Mets are, as we expect, to be in contention come the trade deadline in July, that they may go out and get a starting pitching arm if there are some issues with the starting rotation, even if they stay fully healthy. Because again, I think of the top three teams, the Braves, the Mets, and the Phillies, I think the overall rotation of the Mets is the weakest of the three. The bullpen, they may have the best closer of the three. We don't know what's going to happen, with Philadelphia, with their new closer. Was it Romano coming off of surgery? I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see what happens there. So I'd be inclined to look over with the Mets, considering even last year they didn't really have a very strong rotation. They still managed to win 89 games, and that was including that poor start to the season offensively. And now you add a guy like Soto, who will make much of the rest of the lineup better just simply because of his presence.
Absolutely. I mean, his patience at the plate, I think that's what the Yankees are going to miss most, somebody in front of Judge that's always on base. For brevity's sake, because we do have to get to the NL Central and NL West, let's gloss over the Washington Nationals and the Miami Marlins. Nationals, I have them at 72.5 wins. Their offseason acquisitions were adding Paul DeJong and Ahmed Rosario. They're going to build with that young nucleus. An X factor is the Japanese pitcher Shinizuki Ogasawara. We'll see if he's capable of making the rotation. Scouts say he's a borderline starter. They got Mackenzie Gore, DJ Hurst back, Jake Irvin, Mitchell Parker. All those guys are young. Mike Soroka, Trevor Williams. So, I mean, and Cavalli, hopefully he can stay healthy. He's not going to be a factor until midseason from what I've read. And Ogasawara. So if they get good pitching, they can certainly improve on last season, but a 71-91 record last season, DraftKings has them at 72.5. What does Circa have them at, Amy?
Circa has them at 70.5. And these two teams, the Marlins and the Nationals, because their numbers are so low, I'm going to take the extra time before offering an opinion, because the natural instinct when I see low numbers like that, there are two ways of looking at it. Either that number is way too low simply because of the games you can win by accident and you don't know what the injuries will do. Or you could say that maybe the numbers aren't low enough because the teams are really bad. And whether you're good or bad, you're still going to have to deal with injuries. And obviously, injuries to teams that don't have much to begin with will be more negatively impacting on their ability to win games than if the Dodgers suffer injuries, for example. So I'm going to withhold on both.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah.
Marlins at 63.5. And to show you how odds makers view the White Sox, which there'll be an American League video where we'll go into them, they're at 53.5. So Marlins 10 games better.
I'll give you just for context for those two teams. Marlins are at 63, which is pretty close, and 52.5 for the White Sox. So still a 10-game difference. And of course, the Whites. Well, we'll get to the White Sox in the American League. So.
And again, mentioned that Skip Schumacher gone, Clayton McCullough in. The Marlins tremendous youth movement. Connor Norby, Kyle Stowers. They have high hopes for Davian De Los Santos and Agustin Ramirez. Those guys will get time. I'm, for fantasy team purposes, looking forward to Yuri Perez's return, but he's not going to be ready until around the All-Star break. And Sandy Alcantara will be the opening day starter. He is coming off Tommy John. We're going to get Alcantara against Paul Skeens, I believe, unless there's a setback in spring training, but that'll be your opening day matchup as the Marlins play the Pirates. Max Meyer, another guy that's a highly touted prospect that hasn't materialized in terms of production because of injuries. Ryan Weathers, Cal Quantrill's back. Edward Cabrera, who tremendous stuff. We'll see if he gets it upstairs. Adam Major, who they added from the Padres, another elite prospect. He probably came up too early last year with San Diego. And Perez, who I mentioned. So a lot of talent for the Marlins, but Vic's painfully young. And
my thoughts there may very well be for people who are looking at the Marlins. Maybe you can make some decisions based upon Alcantara and how he looks in spring training. If he looks like he's fully healthy or very close to healthy, and I'm sure they're not going to extend him too much in spring training, maybe they can exceed that number, because that 63 is 60, basically 63 and 99, and they've been in that range, I think, of the mid 60s the last several years. So the number is achievable, but it's we don't know how the manager is going to do, and etc. How some of these young players are going to develop. There is upside on this team. Whether they can accomplish that this year remains to be seen. And again, they're going against arguably three of the best four teams in the National League within their division.
Schumacher had a great run in 23. And then last year, I think going in, he didn't get the contract extension he wanted. Some players got dealt. They won an obscene amount of one-run games in 23, so you knew variance was coming. And to wrap up the NL East with a tight little bow, DraftKings has the Braves as the slight favorite at plus 110, Philly at plus 210, the Mets at plus 250 for value's sake, kind of like them, and the Nationals at plus 6,000.
Now that's to win the division, right?
To win the division. Plus 25,000, correct.
Okay. Circa has Atlanta at plus 186.
Wow, so that's a huge difference.
At plus 186, and the Phillies at plus 186.
Oh wow! So a reminder. I mean, when you do these futures shop, because obviously DraftKings is giving you basically even money, and as Andy just mentioned, you can get plus 186. Now, on the contrary, you get the Marlins at the Phillies at plus 210 and the Mets at plus 250, whereas Circa's pricing all these as co-favorites. So definitely shop around.
Which, by the way, just to give you, excuse me, just a moment, just to give you an idea of how evenly these teams are thought of by Circa, the World Series odds, the Phillies and the Braves are 12-1. The Mets are 11-1. So that's the three of them. And even in the National League, it's plus 675 for the Phillies and the Braves, plus 625 for the Mets. So it's so very close. So maybe because of that, when you take a look at the fact that the Mets are the weakest of the three based upon the World Series and the division odds, maybe the value, since they're all plus 186, you'd still have to decide between the Braves and the Phillies. But then again, based upon the numbers that you have, where the three teams are different, the Mets may actually provide the better value.
And it is an eye of the beholder thing, especially with spring training not even getting started yet. NL Central, let's transition there, where it surprises me. DraftKings has the Chicago Cubs as the favorite at plus 140. The Milwaukee Brewers, who basically won wire to wire last year, plus 250. The Cardinals, who I'm very down on, plus 600. The Reds, plus 650. And the Pirates, plus 700. So clearly seeing this as a two-team race with the Cubs and the Brewers. That was the case last season. Craig Counsell didn't get the results he wanted until very late in the season, and by then it was too late. The Cubs did add Kyle Tucker, Carson Kelly, among others, Ryan Presley, Matthew Boyd, he'll probably contend for a starting spot. They didn't lose much. Kyle Hendricks, who's on the downside of his career, Drew Smiley. They DFA'd Adbert Alzolay, who was a part of the problem with a bullpen that couldn't hold anything last season. And their big moves in terms of losses, they traded Isaac Paredes and Bellinger, Cody Bellinger, now a New York Yankee. Cubs went 83-79 last season. Shota Imanaga, he was a bright spot. Justin Steele as well. So we'll see if the Cubs can put things together. Let's start with them in the NL Central. What are your thoughts on them?
All right, yeah, let me give you the division odds at Circa. They're somewhat similar or in line. The Cubs are the favorite at minus 108. The Brewers are second at plus 330. Cincinnati, another team that we've had expectations for the last few years, and they haven't really seemed to deliver. They're plus 495. And then you've got the Pirates at just under 11-1, and the Cardinals at just under 12-1. The Cubs, again, I look at the rotation. Imanaga, can he repeat what he's done? Steele, of course, I think is also a very capable starter. Taylor, Matthew Boyd, who came over, I think, from Cleveland. When he's healthy, he actually has some pretty decent stuff. So I like the rotation. Some of the acquisitions you made, even a guy like Cody Petit coming over, I think, with the from the Yankees.
Yeah, he's an X-factor in the Bellinger deal.
Yeah, he can provide some from depth. Kyle Tucker, certainly a nice addition coming over from Houston. Houston looks like they're almost conceding they're in a rebuilding phase. We'll get to the American League.
We will get to them in the AL. The Christian Walker addition I thought was interesting for a team that is kind of teetering on I think it's more reloading on the run. But are the Milwaukee Brewers getting disrespected? We'll talk. Just to wrap up the Cubs, 85.5 on their win total. With a little juice at minus 115. Cubs went 83-79 last year. And again, a late push to get over 500 and finish there. The Brewers, a really strong season last year, 93-69. Again, they started hot, never really looked back. And their projected win total is at 83.5 as a couple games below the Cubs. And basically 9.5, 10 games based on their pace of last season. And the Brewers really did not certainly didn't lose much. They'll get a healthy Christian Yelich back and a very interesting addition, Nestor Cortez, now part of their rotation. Brandon Woodruff, who was out most of last season, he's back. We got Peralta. So that's a strong three with Peralta, Woodruff, and Cortez. And they have Aaron Civale, too.
Let me just mention, by the way, Cubs at Circa, the Cubs total is 86. The Brewers total is 83.5, so that's pretty much in line. And considering there was a 10-game difference between these two teams last year, as far as what the actual results were, and the Brewers have always been a solid organization. I would probably trust them a little bit more than the Cubs. But go ahead as far as where you were with the Brewers.
Well, I mean, look, Pat Murphy did a fantastic job. I don't think anybody saw that coming. A guy that Craig Counsell brought on as a former mentor, obviously took over when Counsell split for Chicago. And then the key to last season, and I think going forward, and again, this is not a preview video, but when we do our preview video, we'll talk some NL MVP. Jackson Chourio could be a nice X factor there. That's one of the best young players in baseball. And you've got Chourio and Yelich. They do lose off of last year's team, their shortstop, and really the heart of that squad in Willy Adames. So we'll see how that affects the Brewers. But you got the Cubs, you got the Brewers, and you got the Cincinnati Reds, who is my X factor. They've got a lot of talented pitchers. You got Green, you've got Lodolo coming off an injury, Abbott, Ashcraft, Brett Lauder, who really impressed late in the season. They added Singer, trading him Jonathan India to the Royals to get him. So a team that is trying to shore up the pitching in a ballpark that is a hitter's park. You kind of see where the Reds are going there. Obviously, De La Cruz is going to continue to be the X factor there. Went 77-85 last season, and this season, hoping for a much better season under Terry Francona, who takes over there, and their projected win total is only 78.5. So 77 wins last year with a debacle. I don't think anybody liked David Bell. He certainly mismanaged a lot of that team. And this year, you've got a catcher coming in who is known as a pitcher's catcher in Jose Trevino, and you've got upgrades at that rotation. I like the Reds as a potential sleeper.
The Reds at the Circa have a win total of 79. I see this team certainly capable with the talent that they have, and I guess arguably an upgraded manager, at least a 500 team, which means 81 and 81. So my initial thought right now, and again, we're just doing these sort of like initial thoughts, subject to change, especially because we, first spring training game is 2 days from now, I think.
Yes, and we're taping this for those teams. We're taping this on the 18th of February on a Tuesday.
Yeah, so I do like what the Reds have done. I do like Trevino coming over because if you can handle a pitching staff, that's a key, especially with a young pitching staff, and a lot of those guys are coming out. Hunter Green had a breakthrough year. I always liked Brady Singer, a nice pitcher for them as well. And the lineup, I'll tell you the guy I liked. He didn't have quite as good a year, I think, as maybe expected. Spencer Steer. I like that kid.
Yeah, Spencer. I mean, they've got some talent in Steer. I said De La Cruz. It's O'Neill Cruz. But yeah, I mean, look, they've got catalysts at the top of the lineup. They just have to.
You mean Ellie De La Cruz? You mean?
Yeah. O'Neill Cruz. I'm looking at the Pirates because I'm transitioning to the Pirates.
Oh, okay.
And we'll go to the idea that Trevino is going to be a significant upgrade, I think, for Cincinnati. You've still got young catchers with the Pirates managing a very talented young staff. You've either got Joey Bart or Henry Davis. Henry Davis, they tried to make an outfielder first. Now they're probably going to catch him. We'll see what happens and how that shakes out during spring training. Pirates went 76 and 86. Obviously, when you think of the Pirates, you think of Paul Skeens. And so because of that, I think odds makers are going to say a lot of people are going to probably ride the high side on Pittsburgh, but they didn't add much in the offseason. One key thing, they re-signed Jason McCutchen, and the win total that I see for them is 77.5. So an improvement of maybe 1.5. So I guess they're not really.
But keep in mind, doesn't that discount the fact that what did the pitcher miss? The rookie.
I mean, a couple months.
10 starts, maybe?
Yeah, a couple months.
Well, they won 76 without those 10 starts.
Yeah, that's true. So, and again, if you like the Pirates to the over, they have a young lineup.
By the way, the number here is 75.5.
Yeah, I've got 76.5, but I mean, same ballpark. And you've got very young arms. Well, I mean, I don't see Skeens taking a step backwards, but maybe Jared Jones does. Certainly, Mitch Keller, he was great, and Brandon Ashcraft is now probably the likely fourth starter. They've got Bailey Falter, who had a better year than I think most people anticipated. So we'll see what Pittsburgh does, and we'll talk about. I mean, this is probably one of the more competitive divisions in baseball because the Brewers not getting as much respect. Cubs probably getting a little more than they deserve. And then you got the Reds and the Pirates. And then the St. Louis Cardinals, who I'm already thinking I'm going to fade. And their win total is at 77.5 at DraftKings after an 83 and 79 season. They lose their leader, even though he had it down 2024 in Paul Goldschmidt and really did not add much. They did keep Nolan Arenado, but an 83 and 79 season last year. Ali Marmol, I mean, I don't think they like him at all in that clubhouse. So the Cardinals are my team to fade. I don't think you can tell me, unless they make a significant acquisition in spring training, I don't think there's anything that they can do to get me onto their side. Certainly, they got young talent. Jordan Walker needs to take a step forward, and they've got some guys that stepped up last year, Burleson and Donovan, Lars Nootbaar. So, I mean, there's talent, but again, Wilson Contreras had a down year. That rotation, I'm not a Miles Mikolas fan at all, and you got Steven Matz and their ace would be Sonny Gray, who durability issues with his size. So
and the downside of his career also, Sonny Gray.
Right. So that's where I'm at. I would probably, just to wrap up my thoughts on this division, I think the
Well,
Brewers
what's the total that you have for Cardinals?
77.5 on the heels of an 83 and
Okay, we've
79
got
win.
Circus got 75.5 last time.
Okay, so they're
this time
fading them
they
even
upped it.
more. Yeah, and again, I just don't see how this team gets better. Andre Palante stepped into the rotation last year, and did his job because he was a guy that they were using in middle relief and in tight situations in the 7th and 8th. And he said, no, I feel more comfortable as a starter, and pitched well enough to hold on to that rotation spot, and he'll likely open the season in the rotation. But again, Marmol, within St. Louis, a lot of a polarizing figure for the fan base, to put it nicely.
Yeah, and there was a lot of head scratching with a lot of the things the Cardinals did and did not do. They wondered how the manager stayed as long as he did. Cardinals are a very proud franchise. I mean, what are they, second to the Dodgers as far as National League pennants won historically? And they've always had a solid organization. They do get a little bit weaker with Goldschmidt gone, but again, you pointed out it was not a typical year for him last year. I've liked Brendan Donovan the last few years as far as what he adds there, someone who doesn't get a lot of play. The closer, Helsley, right? It's Helsley, who I think led the league in saves last year.
Yep.
The problem is you got to be playing with the lead in order to get saves. So I don't know if he'll be able to do that. But my initial thought would be, I think the overall atmosphere in the clubhouse has to be better than it was last year. That might be for a few more wins. My first thought would be it's the Cardinals. We can usually count on them bouncing back from weak years, but I'm not ready to go over quite yet. I may end up on the under. They didn't really add a significant amount of new faces to this team, so maybe this team is pretty much like the team that was last year. But I'm also going to attribute that a number of the games that they lost last year were games that they should have won. So maybe this team was closer to a 500 team last year than that record suggested. So there's still a little bit of a leeway, but not that much of a leeway. So I'm going to withhold on this one.
Sure, and a month from now we'll hold ourselves to more significant determinations in terms of setting things in stone. But what we can agree on is the Los Angeles Dodgers are the team.
Well, by the way, the Cardinals were 83 and 79 last year, so they were better than I had meant them to be. But the wins total suggests that they're going to show a bigger drop off. This team, I thought last year had more. I thought this team had the talent to contend for for more than they did in that division.
Yeah, I mean, they were disappointing regardless of finishing over 500. The Dodgers, 103.5 wins is a projected win total, coming off a 98, 60, and 60.
By the way, we've got it at 104 at 104 and a half at
so right in that ballpark, an obscene amount of wins. I was thinking yesterday in preparation for this video, because I don't look at numbers before I make them. I'm like, I'm thinking 106 wins is probably the where I would set this based on what the Dodgers did. And this is an off-season recap video. So from the defending champions, they lose Walker Buehler, who hopefully he figures things out in Boston, but obviously an injury-plagued 2024. Jack Flaherty, who came on board for the Tigers, and really did provide a boost to a rotation that was dealing with injuries over the last few months of the season, did his job, earned himself a ring, now back in Detroit because he didn't get the contract he wanted. This is a team that, as good as that bullpen was, had to DFA Ryan Brazier just to stockpile all the arms that they have. I mean, they can turn games. They can wrap them up with a lead after the 6th inning based on
the old Yankees who had the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning. Wetland and Rivera, yeah.
Yep. Gavin Lux is gone, and then you add Blake Snell, who was the most dominant pitcher in baseball once he got healthy for a while last season. They won the Sasaki sweepstakes. We'll see if he is a rotation arm or ends up settling into that bullpen. Tanner Scott, who will be part of that bullpen. They added Hee-Sung Kim, a shortstop everybody's excited about. And an afterthought, Michael Conforto, no big whoop. Kirby Yates is on the team now. And they kept Kike Hernandez and Teo Hernandez. And Teoscar Hernandez staying put was also a big deal, considering he was an unsung hero last year, the defending home run derby champion. So the Dodgers go into the 2025 season with Yamamoto, Glasnow, Snell, Kershaw, who's coming back for another year, and happy to see it because I wouldn't have wanted to see him go out on a down note. Hopefully, he stays healthier this year. And then Tony Gonsolin, Sasaki, Miller, Sheehan, guys that stepped up last year. Landon Knack. This is a Dodgers team that obviously, if they stay healthy, I think it would be a disappointment if they don't go 102-60.
Yeah, and the number here is, I think I said about 104.5. So my first inclination on numbers like that is to look under, because the injuries generally can only hurt that, and we don't know the extent of the injuries. Especially, and again, Kershaw's not a major factor now, but he's still capable, but he's also been injury prone the last few years. Now, would he be able to make 15 starts this year or 25 starts this year? That could be a big difference as far as the win total. And again, some of the other pitchers that they have. Blake Snell, that's what he can do. He's going to be, I guess he's considered the ace at this point for the Dodgers.
I mean, you could fight about
Yamamoto.
it.
Yamamoto,
Glasnow was the ace line. I mean, it's obscene. You've got three number ones. Let's just
and then we don't know what you're going to get from Ohtani when he comes back. I mean, he's supposed to.
I would never pitch him. I would never pitch him. Not with this team.
No, I'd rather have his bat in the lineup every day.
And, I think he wants to pitch, so I defer to him. But I personally, if it was my wish, Dave Roberts could talk him out of, we'll throw you in there every once in a while.
Maybe what I would say is, and I don't know how Ohtani would, maybe you pitch him like once every 10 days.
Right.
Which would be like 25, 26 starts for the season, something along those lines. But yeah, I haven't decided yet, but I'm almost certain, unless I played every team on the board, that Dodgers would not be a team that I would play over. Okay, whether I play them under remains to be seen because of the injury factor and the high expectations, and the fact that a great season is when you go 108-54, meaning you're winning 2 out of every 3 games. The Dodgers can come close, but what they win last year? They won was 106,
98 and 64.
No, 98. Okay, that's what I was thinking of a couple of years back. That you're still asking them to let's see. I guess it was 2 years ago that they won a little over 100. But even just going back, I'm looking at a magazine that usually shows the win totals for the previous years, what they won. Mm-hmm. This year they decided, well, everybody's going to bet win totals. Why don't we just screw around with everybody and give the winning percentage? So they're showing winning percentage instead of actual games won the last few years. Thank you, publications.
Well, look, where I stand on this is I'm in total agreement because the over 100 wins in baseball, that's hard to do. This is a sport that's built on failure. I mean, 350 is a brilliant season at the plate, and you're still failing, more than 6 times out of 10.
Basically 65% of the time.
So from that standpoint, total agreement, but I would not bet the under on the Dodgers, just too loaded a team. Now, I'll say this, the NL West, the Dodgers at DraftKings are a minus 450 favorite to win the division. That I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. So let's talk about the teams that are most likely to.
By the way, and I'm going to just sum that up very quickly as far as the Dodgers win total. I think Arizona is going to have another good season. I think the Padres will have a pretty good season. I think it's going to come down to the Giants. If the Giants can bounce back from the last couple of years and win 85, 88 games, those are the wins that might come away from the Dodgers.
Okay, I'm down on the Giants. So, but we'll talk about all these teams. Diamondbacks plus 550 to win the division. Padres a very enticing plus 1,000. San Francisco plus 1,800. Colorado plus 25,000. Would not surprise me if they compete with the Marlins for the.
Let me give you those numbers at Circuit for the division as well. Sure. Dodgers are minus 685, so that's even higher. Wow. Then you've got Arizona and the Padres each at 12-1. You've got the Giants at 27.75, basically 28-1. And if you believe in the 69 Mets miracle repeating, you get the Colorado Rockies at plus 377-1, 377-1 to win the division.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk about the Giants and the Padres and even gloss over the Rockies, but let's go to the Diamondbacks. Being viewed as the primary contender in this division. Added Corbin Burnes. There was a Burnes sweepstakes, and surprisingly, the Snakes won it because Corbin Burnes, I believe his wife, wanted to live in the Arizona area. So now you've got a rotation with Zach Gallen, Burnes, Merrill Kelly, Eduardo Rodriguez, Brendan Pfaadt, Jordan Montgomery as the sixth guy trying to get back into the mix, and even Shelby Miller is around once he gets healthy. So it's a very solid team. They did move off of a closer who was brilliant but blew a lot of games last year and really took a step backwards in Paul Sewald, but they got a lot of options there for Torey Lovullo. And look, Christian Walker, who I mentioned earlier, going to the Astros, is the guy that they lost, but they replaced him with Josh Naylor, and everybody else is back. You've got Corbin Carroll, who had a really down few months to start the season, then found his groove. The offense and the infield, Naylor will step in for Walker at first, but you've got Marte at second. Perdomo re-signed long-term. He'll be your shortstop. Junior Suarez will be your third baseman. He had a lot of home runs last year. I like Guerrero and Moreno behind the plate. I mean, it's a very solid team. And then, in the outfield, you've got Gurriel, Grichuk, Carroll, Jake McCarthy had a really nice season. Alec Thomas and Pavin Smith are back. So, I mean, it's a team with continuity. It's a team, that really won some big games last year. Ended up 89-73. I think a lot of people forget about that. And again, that's with Carroll struggling a significant amount early in the season. So, what's your take on the Snakes?
Well, for this division, I'm also going to give you one of the things that the Circa has, and that's will or won't make the playoffs. Okay, you have to lay 66-1 for the Dodgers to make the playoffs. So 66 to win $1. Don't think there's much value in that. However, you've got the Padres and the Diamondbacks minus 125 to make the playoffs. That's fairly reasonable given the strength of their rosters and that they, quote unquote, only have to play 14, 15 games against the Dodgers, and they'll win some of those games. Simply, I love the depth of the rotation for the Diamondbacks. The Giants are plus 205 to make the playoffs and 25-1 on Colorado. So clearly, you've got the odds-on choice to win everything basically in the Dodgers, but minus 125 for two teams in that division, both Arizona and San Diego. That shows a lot of high optimism for those two franchises, and I think that certainly with both of those teams, it's deserved. I do like Arizona. Let me see their win total. We mentioned the Dodgers are 104.5 before. The Diamondbacks are 86.5. I like that one over.
86 and a half at DraftKings as well, so the identical number.
And for the Padres, their number is 85.5. And I still think the composition of this team. And again, these numbers are low, and I wonder how much impact or influence those relatively low numbers on the Diamondbacks and Padres are influenced by the fact that they're in the division with the Dodgers. And I haven't done it yet. I'd have to go back and see what the Dodgers record was against both of those teams last year. I don't have that in front of me right now, but let's again, I'll use 14 games. Let's say they were 11-3. Okay. Are they going to go much better than 11-3 against these teams this year? Probably not. So in other words, the 11-3 may not have been factored in to the because if you're looking at low numbers here, you have to believe that a couple of these reasons for the Diamondbacks and the Padres to go over is that maybe they might eke out 2 additional wins each over the Dodgers, who may have had great records against them last year.
Right, and I remember the San Diego LA games are always tough, although LA did get the better of San Diego a lot. Arizona stole some games from them, and then to transition from the Snakes to the Padres 85.5 at DraftKings as well. You mentioned same number as Circa. They were in the Sasaki sweepstakes, lost out on him, and rebounded nicely, I thought, with Nick Pivetta, who will be the 4th starter. They've got to keep the top of that rotation healthy, but you got Dylan Cease, Joe Musgrove, and Yu Darvish back. Vasquez and Waldron will battle to see who the number 5 guy is. Padres bullpen was underrated last season, did a lot of nice things, and you got a team again that did lose Jurickson Profar, so I think that's their significant loss. And they replaced him with Jason Hayward, excellent defensive outfielder, but certainly has been wishy-washy at the plate for the last.
Did you, by the way, did you mention Michael King for the rotation?
And Michael King, I forgot about Michael King.
Okay,
But
I
yes,
wasn't sure.
Pivetta would be the fifth starter.
Yeah.
I did not have him on my list, but yes, Michael
King's
King.
he's been a solid starter the last couple of years.
Absolutely, great stuff. And again, I mean, look, this is a Padres team. There was talk about who was going to be the odd man out between Luis Arias and Jurickson Profar. Obviously, is Profar, since he's not there anymore. Jackson Merrill, hopefully he takes a step forward, one of the better players in baseball. You got Fernando Tatis Jr. and Manny Machado. You put that 1-2 punch up with anybody, and if Merrill steps up, I think he'll be probably elevated. Mike Shildt, one of the better managers in the game too. So again, if they stay healthy, they've got all the ingredients to make a run. Plus 1,000 to steal the division. Obviously, the Dodgers would have to have significant downgrade from what we expect from them for that to happen. But certainly, Padres to make the playoffs. I know you have those numbers in front of you. That would be something
minus 125.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Not great value. I'm probably more inclined to bet the over on their win total than to make the playoffs, especially since the NL East is loaded too.
Yeah.
So let's finish up our recap with the San Francisco Giants and Colorado Rockies, and we'll start with the Giants because I think we might have different opinions on the Giants. I know you're in wait and see mode on them. I'm in instant fade mode on them. And again, it's a team that has had a lot of turnover at the top in terms of who actually runs the organization. A lot of guys step down. They lose Blake Snell. Bob Melvin is back for some continuity. It's year 2 for him on the heels of replacing Gabe Kapler with a veteran presence at manager. I know Kapler was a polarizing guy. And to add Willy Adames to the mix as the, I guess, to put it in terms that I think of it as your consolation prize for losing Blake Snell. So Logan Webb, Robbie Ray, Justin Verlander's in the mix in that lineup. Hayden Birdsong, he did a nice job, and they have Black and Hicks. And I don't know if Hicks is going to be a starter again. That was an experiment that started off pretty well, but basically he give you 5 innings, and then late in the season they put him back in the bullpen because they didn't want to wear out his arm. So we'll see what happens in spring training with the Giants. But again, unless Adames does really well, Marco Luciano, top prospect, he's got to figure some things out at the plate. Too talented to strike out and have as poor plate discipline as he does. But yeah, it's a team that they're hoping that Heliot Ramos continues, picks up where he left off. Gerard Encarnacion, another young bat. They've re-signed Yastrzemski. Could do well, but again, to me, I think the Giants are a distant fourth behind the 3 that we mentioned, and their win total is 80.5 at DraftKings. So you're basically a 500 team. I think they'll be below 500. So I'm on the fade boat. You're probably more optimistic, Andy.
No, not really. I was just saying before
Okay.
that. No, with the other 3 teams. Well, what I was saying is that the Dodgers' win total might be impacted by.
Okay, gotcha.
Are the Giants better than a 500 team? Because they were 80 and 82 last year, I think it was.
Giants were 80 and 82, correct?
Yeah. So, if they can win 85, 86 games, some of those wins might come from the Dodgers. I'm not so sure that I would agree with it. I'm probably more negative on them because I'm not crazy about the rotation. I really, Logan Webb is nice, but Robbie Ray has injury issues, and the rest of the rotation is somewhat unproven. I'm not too much scares me about that lineup. Let me see. The win total for the Giants here is 79.5. So basically a repeat of last season. I would think that this team probably around the 500 team where they're priced. So I'm not sure that I'm probably more inclined to play under than over, simply because I have that much admiration for the Diamondbacks and the Padres.
All right, I'm with you on that. And we'll finish up our NL off-season hot stove recap and semi-preview with the Colorado Rockies, who went 61 and 101 last season, 1 game worse than the Miami Marlins, and they are at 58.5 on their win total. So
we've got them at circa at 60.
Okay, 58.5.
A little bit more optimistic.
And,
May not
the
matter.
bottom line is, I think it's because Dodgers, Padres, Diamondbacks, all
Yeah.
on paper look impressive, and wins got to come from somewhere. Colorado really did not do anything this off season. I have their biggest move is adding Tyro Estrada and Keston Hiura, who are both on make goods, and they lose Charlie Blackmon, finally retired. And obviously he was great for morale and still an effective bat despite his age. So not a ton to be excited about if you're in Denver.
No, I really can't find anything. I've never been. I mean, I'm looking at German Marquez as the ace of the staff, and there's one of those when I was talking about the Mets. I mean, Senga is probably, if I'm going to look at the bottom 10 number one aces, I might have Senga at the top of that bottom third, like would be number 21 overall. But I think Marquez is down near the bottom, and that's supposed to be the ace, and there's not a lot behind him. Blackmon, even though he was fading in the last couple of years of his career, was still a good veteran presence in that lineup, and I think that's going to miss. It's hard to be optimistic about the Rockies. And again, if you are correct about the Giants being more of a fade than perhaps I think they might be. I still think they could be around 500, but if they're like a 74, 75 win team, I think that those wins might go to the Rockies.
All right, very good. Bretton Doyle is an X factor. He had a nice season last year, one of the few that did with the Colorado Rockies. And that's going to wrap up our NL portion of this preview. I think Andy and I are in agreement that it's an obscene amount of wins for the Dodgers. He's leaning towards an under, but probably won't play it. I'm definitely not playing an under. Probably won't play an over either. And then both of us, I think, view the NL East as a free-for-all. We talked about shopping around because divisional odds greatly vary. That really surprises me that Circa has three co-favorites.
Minus 186 on all of them. A little bit under 2 to 1, yeah.
A plus 186, right? Yeah, it would have to be.
Yeah, it had to be plus 186.
And then the NL Central, which we discussed. I'm on the Brewers. Yeah. I'm on the Brewers and fading the Cardinals. Any thoughts on? But I mean, I think the NL Central is if anybody wants to make a splash, that might be where to go if you like the Pirates or the Reds.
I was going to say Pirates or Cincinnati might be, good values there. No, I'm pretty much in agreement with you. My thought on the Dodgers and my quote unquote preference for the under is simply the injury factor. And, of course, they did have some injuries last year and they still managed to win, a bunch of games. But what did we say? 98 last year, I think.
The Dodgers,
yeah. But it's not so much that they. Let's put it this way: if the Dodgers had, let's say, an average number of injuries compared to all the other teams, they win the 104.5. They go over. But
right, and I mean,
to occur, is they can afford more injuries than any other team, and that's factored into the number. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to get those injuries. So yeah, and I agree certainly in the National League East that I can make a better case for Philadelphia. If I were, and again, we'll do this, another month right before the season starts. But if I were to go to rank the teams, I'd probably still go. I'd probably go Philly, the Mets, and Atlanta in that order. Although Atlanta is the wild card, depending upon how Albies and Acuna return.
Yeah, I'm going to wait and see on spring training because Spencer Strider being healthy and Acuna obviously will determine whether I like the Braves more than those other two teams or less. This has been the NL Hot Stove Recap for Andy Iskoe, owner of TheLogicalApproach.com. I'm Tony Mejia of PlaybookSports.com. Keep an eye out for our AL preview. That'll be floating around on the interwebs right along this one. So thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.